friends, or maybe more. Earn a 20 quid free bet for every friend you refer to Paddy Power, thanks to our Friends with Benefits programme. Log into your Paddy Power account and share your referral link to get started. Terms and conditions apply. 18+, begambleaware.org.
Hello and welcome to this Cheltenham Ante Postcast. I'm Maddie Plale, joined in the studio by Dave Orton. Dave's back, and Anthony Ive as well from the Racing Football Outlook. A new face. Nice to have you on board, Anthony.
Very much.
Yeah, and Darren Hughes as well. How could I forget you, Darren, from Paddy Power. The races this week we're going to be looking at are the Ultima and the Fred Winter. We'll start with the Ultima first. Let's get some prices, please, Darren.
Sure thing, Maddie, yeah. So give me a copper for Paul Nicholls as our 6-1 favourite, and we've a raft of them then in around the 10 to 12 to 1 mark. So Mennella Rocco is 10s, Mr. Malarkey is 10s, Disco Ram is 12s, Janik is 12s, Justice Sting is 12s, Live Love Laugh, Robinsford, Some Neck, 2A per me, Up for Review, they're all 12s, Kusar Savola's 14s, and Zarek more than the 14-16s we can touch on.
Okay, brilliant. So many horses to get through. First off, Talk is Cheap. I quite fancied him for this a couple of weeks ago, but the trainer says he's not going to go. So if you were on the sort of same line of thinking as me, don't think he's turning up for this race. Give Me a Copper, gents, is the obvious one to start off with. The stable seemed to think an awful lot of him. He always promised a lot, lightly raced for his age, but it was a good comeback run. Anthony, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, you know what, his run at Sandown was frankly ridiculous for a horse that had been off for 14 months. You know, he's clearly talented.
Cost a lot of money as a young horse.
£270,000 as a youngster, and when he was with Donna Coffey, Donna Coffey thought he was a Gold Cup horse in the making, and if that's the case, then you know, a mark of 145, he could be the one in here to make an absolute mockery of his mark. I suppose the concern that I would have would be one, he's a bit short in the prices. But also, when you've had a horse that's been off for so long and then comes back and runs a race like that, there's always a bounce issue.
So let's go into this a little bit. How much do you believe in this bounce factor? Because some horses seem to suffer from it, some horses don't. Some people very much think it's true, other people rubbish it.
I don't think it's a massive concern. I'd say it can happen. It depends on the horse, I think. I think really the horse clearly didn't mind the break of having 14 months off and then running at Sandown like that. And at 6-1 in that race, that was the only concern I'd have. Yeah. But he's clearly a talented horse.
Yeah, looking at it from an anti-post perspective, Dave, I don't know, maybe if you're really confident you can go in on the 6s, but maybe trying to find something at a bigger price.
I seem to remember he was a huge drifter at Sandown on his comeback, and Nicholls has been tipping this on the festivals previews that he started doing, I think. He always seems to have one horse every year, doesn't he, for a handicap that he likes to get stuck into. He's done it in the Fred Winters and things like that. 3 runs over fences. You're the stats man, Anthony. So, I mean, experience. How many runs do you want to have?
Well, looking at some of the stats from this race, should we just reel off this?
Yeah, go for it. You're the pro.
In the last 10 years, only the Druid's Nephew and Golden Chieftain had run more than 8 times over fences. 8 of the last 10 winners had no more than 2 wins over fences. Shift to novices in the last 5 years with Kusar Savolo and Tempor 2 and Holywell. The last novice before that to win the race was Wichita Lyman. The last 9 winners had all run within 7 weeks of the festival. Obviously, the equine flu issue might scupper that preparation. All 10 had experience at Cheltenham, which is a bit of a downside for Give Me a Copper, but you know. 4 of the last 5 ran at the festival previously. And in 2018, the 1st, 3rd, 4th and 5th ran at the festival in 2017 from 8 horses that ran that fit that criteria. More interestingly is the number of horses who have won this race and ran in 3 or fewer handicap chases in their career. 8 from the last 10 winners, which... I mean, Give Me a Copper will be in there for that. Yeah. I mean, he's completely unexposed in that sense. Yeah. There were 76 horses that fit that criteria, and if you backed every single one of them, it was a £24 profit from a £1 stake. You know, you really want something that's lightly raced and unexposed over fences, and you know, he clearly is that. The Cheltenham. I like looking into these stats. I like looking into these numbers and trends. I wouldn't take them as absolute gospel every single time. But it's certainly worth noting for the future.
Yeah. And Darren, obviously those stats give us an insight into what's needed. Do you think that Give Me a Copper has ticked a lot of boxes, or are you still sort of on the fence with him?
Well, I suppose first of all on the trends thing, like I think what's very important when you're talking about trends is working out which ones are of value and which ones aren't, because I think they can often be manipulated to support a certain point of view. I'm not saying that's what Anthony's doing by any manner of means. Don't get me wrong. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Yeah. You need to find the way I see it is you want to try and find a profile of a horse. You don't necessarily want to find one particular horse in this.
Exactly.
You want to find a lightly raced,
pattern,
unexpected.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that completely. On Give Me a Copper, I can see the angle, but Jesus Christ, there's a 6-1 shot in a race like this. Like, I listened to Harry Durham yesterday. Their ultimate aim is the Grand National. On Sunday. He was previously spoken of as a potential RSA horse, so he's obviously held in high regard, but look, his delicate nature's there for everyone to see, and none of his form to me is particularly staggering. Like, if you go back through it, beating Burbank 3.5 lengths or whatever on off levels, not brilliant form. Beaten 3 ways by whatever, 3.5 lengths, not brilliant form. Now, his comeback run at Sandown was obviously very eye-catching. You'd have to be blind to miss it. Like, he came there tanking and just didn't see it out due to whatever lack of fitness. But the bounce factor, I do believe in it to a point. For me, there's enough negatives to me to want to look way elsewhere when he's 6-1. If he was 16-1, fair enough, I'd be saying, have a bit of interest, but not at the price.
Okay, how about then we move on to Mennella Rocco, second in the Gold Cup back in 2017, so he's certainly got the class to figure here. Not been at his best lately, Anthony, but dropping down the weights, and he clearly likes the track.
I love the horse. I think he's great, and he's an absolute stayer.
Jumping's been his sort of downfall, hasn't it?
And he hasn't done much in the last. He obviously ran well earlier in the year, but he hasn't done much over the last 12 months. I sort of half expect him to be going to the National at some stage in the near future, and I'd give him an absolute squeak in that. But I don't think that this is the type of race for him, if I'm honest.
Okay, nice and quick, Dave.
He's potentially one of the best handicapped horses in the race, isn't he? What's he on? 155, which would put him nearly top weight.
Got to be around about that.
Yeah, you'd have to think.
Black Corton might be.
157.
157. That's right. So you're trying to work out what's going to be your top weight, and I mean, I remember when Ben Salem won a couple of years back. He was a big gamble, wasn't he? Of running King. Yeah. That was the first time someone had carried over 11 stone for quite a while.
It could well be
I
right,
think
yeah.
I think that was right.
Yeah.
I'm sure I wrote something like that at the time. And certainly in the last couple of years, it looks like the higher weighted horses have been favoured. So don't be put off by the back class, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Untitled Chapter 2 won it off 155 as well. So
there you go.
If you've got the class, then you can stay.
Yeah. If we just talk about him as a horse, though, Dave. I mean, I know we're talking about handicaps, and I know those bad runs mean he's come down in the handicap, but do you want a horse in form, ideally, for you, that's got a bit of a sort of sexier up-and-comer profile?
It's John Joe, isn't it? They can just, they just can come. Good, remember Holywell and horses like that. He just gets them right for that day. Forget what John Joe's been doing in January and probably most of February. It's all about 1 week in March, and you wouldn't be at all surprised if a certain big player who owns a certain set of colours had a little squeak on him somewhere down the line, because he is going to be a big price, isn't he? So. Yeah,
well, the market's clearly sort of taken by him. Darren, what do we think about Mennella Rocco? Would he be on your radar?
No.
Nope.
No. I think he's there for one purpose, and that's hopefully to keep the weight down on another one of my fancies that owned by the same colours, which we'll touch on later on. Look, if he goes and wins, fair play to him. Absolutely fair play to him, and I wouldn't begrudge him it, but he will not be carrying a red cent of my money anyway, because there's way too many negatives. He's so much to prove, and at 10-1 for me, it's not a risk worth taking.
Okay, well, when I was looking at the market for this, I was surprised to see single farm payment in there, sort of very well fancied serial bridesmaid, second to Untitled Chapter off market for 142 in this, and then fifth off 145 last year, I think it was. It clearly does act well in these sort of conditions, Dave, but I mean,
he's a fiend.
Yeah, he's a fiend.
He's a fiend. It's a great word in horse racing. Fiendishly difficult to win with, but he is an actual fiend. He had every single chance, didn't he, to win last time, and somehow managed to throw it in. So he'll be there. He knows to track like the back of
Is
his
it a
hand.
solid each way selection, do you think?
Absolutely, because let's not forget these bookmakers go silly places, don't they, on some of these races? So
doing 5 places at the moment, are they? You're doing 5 places on this race?
Yeah, we're 5 places on all Cheltenham handicaps between now and the day,
Wow.
and that is likely to be even more on the day, I would say.
I can see that. Say absolutely, he's one for your play spot, definitely. But would you back him to win? No,
Not a chance.
mental, wouldn't you?
Not a chance.
I mean, past winners have done well in this race coming on. Obviously, he's not won it previously, but he's run well in it. Would that give you confidence coming forward? Or?
I think his chance has gone, if I'm honest. I can't see him winning this race, if I'm completely honest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. He could well go well. Darren, I suppose you're going to agree with the lads.
It's a good few nouns I could use to describe describe single farm payment, the politest of which are thief, fiend and hound, and I will not get any nastier than that. I've absolutely no interest in backing him. No, move on.
Okay, we'll move on then. Mr. Malarkey, he's got a number of options. The National Hunt Chase was mooted as an option for him. He won the Rennerstown. Maybe fair to say not a great renewal of that race. Dave, obviously...
Tough race, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah.
That would be of some concern. 4 Mile, are we thinking potentially he might defect to 4 Mile and maybe?
I think he might want a trip.
I thought 148 was an okay mark anyway.
Okay.
You know what, I thought that was a poor race before I was watching it, and then I was at Ascot on the day and I thought it was a bit of an average race at the time, but I think maybe I've been doing it a bit of a disservice.
Okay.
I don't think he's that bad a horse, and I think now McGinty's not a bad horse. I think, I think he might be weighted for a half decent handicap somewhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up.
Well, fancy for this,
Yeah.
isn't he? He's like,
Yeah, I think he is pretty well fancied for the
Tens,
Mile.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so maybe a different sort of end location for Mr. Malarkey, but I do think his stamina is very much his forte, isn't it? So if we saw him in a race like this with a strong pace, he could do well.
is there an age band for this? Since we're on the stats and we're doing this,
Let me have a look.
can young horses win it? Because he's a 6-year-old.
Yeah, I remember seeing something like that. I don't think it's out of the question. Let me have a quick look through and I'll see.
Okay. While the lads are just having a quick look, Darren, any others sort of towards the top of the market? Who do you think's the main player at the head of the market?
So I actually am interested in Mr. Malarkey. I actually like him.
I like him. He's got a nice way of doing things, isn't he? Just stays.
He's I think he's an idle old sort, but like he's obviously loads of talent. And that's the type of horse you kind of want for these handicaps. Like you don't want something that's going to go out and obliterate the field by 25 lengths 6 weeks beforehand and go up £1 million. Like I do think he'd be better suited to the 4 miler. But if he was to turn up here and somebody was to say I'm going back on him, which is I wouldn't put them off anyway. I think he's as likely a winner as Ante. Like Discorama is up there as well. He's going to the 4 miler. Janica, I won't even go there for the time being. Justice Sting again, grand. Like just worry about him having Ante in hand, and I'd be slightly worried about him getting in and handling Cheltenham. Justice Sting. So yeah, in terms of the ones near the top of the market, Mr. Malarkey would be the one I'd be the quickest one to back.
Yeah. Gents, what have we found? Anything?
I was just going to comment on Discorama. Is that definite he's going for the 4 miler?
Yeah, confirmed.
Okay, fair enough.
Kustar Civil was a 6-year-old, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Of course, last year's winner.
I want to mention him actually. We've sort of covered Mr. Malarkey there. I think maybe it would be wise to say Colin Tizard is giving the vibes that they want to go for the National Hunt Chase, but we'll see. Kustar Civil, last year's winner, of course, he's only £3 higher now. It seems you would think that this has been the aim the whole season, and I mean, he did it well last year. Shantufly was flying at him in the closing stages, but he's a good horse, Anthony.
He is. He won it pretty comfortably last year, and he
Not
probably.
sure it was pretty comfortably.
No, he was
Sweating if you'd have backed him, weren't you?
Well, Kills would have been sweating at the time, but I didn't back him, so I wasn't sweating at all. I think he had some in hand as well. Shantufly is a good benchmark, and he clearly he's clearly a talented horse, and I got the feeling he probably wanted a bit of soft ground, but then he come fourth in the Martin Pipe on good ground behind Champagne Classic. So I'd say I don't think it's desperate that he needs soft ground in the race.
Okay, Dave?
I've always had him down as a mud lover, but I forgot that actually. Totally forgot that. Again, you could sort of see it. Nick Williams had a big win at the weekend of a handicap hurdle. Eric the Red, was it? Eric the Rouge, yeah, that's right, Eric the Rouge, of course. And that was a big fillip for his stable as well, because he was moaning a lot about the
flu
vaccinations, because they just had to redo everything basically. So you felt for them certainly a little bit on that. So there'll be be loads of people who were on him last year, probably because of Lizzie Kelly. That was one of the stories of the festival, really. So you can see his price coming back in.
She rides Cheltenham particularly well, seems to have a lot of winners there these days. Darren, before I sort of open the floor up to mention a whole host of the others at bigger prices, we have to mention Walt, who won that 888 Sport Handicap Chase at the weekend. Neil Mulholland won the race before with the Druid's nephew, and this horse, he's a funny old horse, isn't he? But he's clearly improving.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you couldn't have been more impressed with his performance at the weekend. Like, I think the race was kind of probably run to suit, but he really did put them to bed. Massive performance, definitely a career best. Like, RPRs have run to 145, and that should definitely get him into this if he goes up £6 or £7. My worry is just how much can he possibly have in hand. Like, he's reasonably exposed over fence at this stage as well. He's had 11 runs. Like, I'm not saying I struggle to believe the performance at the weekend necessarily, but he's not one of these up and comers. He's obviously not a novice. He's not one of these up and comers. Sorry, he is still a novice, but he's not one of these up and comers that that you could say still has bags of improvement. For me, I'd be looking elsewhere, to be honest.
Yeah, he's one with a sort of less sexier profile. I mean, there's a massive long list in front of us. You can see it here. Dave, at the bigger prices, who's taken your eye?
I've got a couple of squiggles next to a few. Up for a View of Willie Mullins. It's quite interesting. I thought he jumped really, really well last time out.
In the Thyestes, is it?
Yeah, and Paul Townend went literally right around the houses that day, so he ran well. Robins Firth, we talked about Mr. Malarkey, stablemate, got into his odd. When he made his comeback at Haydock last month, I had him down for this, and then he went, of course, and won next time. So I don't know whether that's really hampered his mark. I thought
Grand National, the owners have never wanted to go for that race, have they? Though that's the funny thing about him; they're very adamant.
Him going all right in a National, absolutely. Yeah. He does turn a bit. The one that I really like for this actually ran in that Walt race, and that's Glen Rocco. If he goes for this, he's got a host of other options as well. Nothing went right for him on Saturday, and he watch that back again. The amount of ground he makes up in the home straight. Yeah, no Cheltenham form. He's won around Fontwell, and I just think there's a big payday in him still.
I'm totally with you. Absolutely love Glen Rocco. I think you forgive him that run, although he won last time at Kempton. The race sort of fell apart. I think he's a big horse. He's a bold horse.
Old-fashioned chaser.
Always gets out of pace. I think he needs a big galloping track now, perhaps. Anthony, what say you on Glen Rocco?
I think he's really talented. I like him. I can't really put a downside on him. I think he's got a good chance in this.
Fills us both with confidence.
There's no numbers behind that one, but
there would be.
But there's a couple in here that I quite like. I did like Rather Be until the weekend. He didn't really put much of a performance.
Does he want this trip?
I think he's an Oscar. I think he's going to want 3 miles and good ground in the future, but just no confidence after that. If he had run a half decent race in that, I would have been interested in him. The one that really takes me is the World's End, if he turns up in this. He might go to the 4 mile of the RSA, and he's clearly a talented horse. He ran in the Albert Bartlett 2 years ago when Penhill won, and he was absolutely tanking along in that race when he fell. He was going to be there or thereabouts right at the end of the race. They stuck him over hurdles again last year, and it was soft ground throughout the year. And anything close to good to soft is like, you might as well just put a line through him right now. He needs genuinely soft ground. He won good ground. He wants genuinely good ground. He won good ground at Aintree in the Grade 1 novice there over hurdles, and he's been pretty good over fences so far. And he's sort of gone under the radar a little bit. And he's probably a bit high in terms of a mark. He's off 155, so he's going to be there or thereabouts top weight. But I think he's better than 155.
Yeah.
But he might go to other races.
Yeah, he's got that class edge, like you say, isn't he? So I'm sure plenty of people will be latching onto that. Darren, what of some of the Irish Brigade? Maldini is a horse on this list. A lot of people are going to be attracted to. And then Tuer Permis on here. He's going for the Ryanair. So what's the best of the Irish?
So I'll touch on a few of the Irish here, Maddie. I have 2 fancies for this race, and one of them is an Irish horse, but I'll touch on him last. So just to touch on a couple of them. So Some Neck then is towards the head of the market. He's a slight head scratcher. Like, they've always sworn in Willie's that he needs a marathon, but his best form has been like 2.5 miles to 2 miles 6. He's by 8, so he's likely to handle good ground, and his form will back that up. And I'd expect him to improve from his latest run because he fell reasonably early doors in the TSDs, and he'd been off for a couple of months previous to that, so that could have been just a pipe opener. My worry, I suppose, is Willie's record in the handicaps at the festival. It's deplorable enough, to be honest. But ironically enough, I actually fancy one of his, which we'll touch on later. But some neck wouldn't just be for me. Up for review, Willie says good ground and a long trip will suit him, and he's highly likely to get that here. Again, the worries are he's run twice at Cheltenham, and that wouldn't necessarily preclude him from winning here, but his 2 runs
been a bit fragile, hasn't he?
There were no shows, yeah, and he is a small bit fragile. The one I actually like amongst the Irish is Live, Love, Laugh, also trained by Willie Mullins. Get the negatives out of the way first. He's been to the course 3 times, and he's either run deplorably or he's fallen. And the aforementioned Mullins factor in the handicaps is not necessarily a positive. However, for me, there are other positives. He has not had that many chase runs under his belt. He's relatively unexposed to the trip. He'll handle the good ground. He's likely to improve for his latest run, and the form has been franked beautifully. Cadmium went in yesterday, who was 5th behind him the last time. Dr. Phoenix was 6th. He obviously finished 2nd to Cadmium. And even Land of Hope and Glory ran a stormer behind Real Steel the last day. And he was, I think, 7th or 8th in that race. He might be a small bit tight to get in off his mark, but with a bit of help from the English handicapper, which he'll no doubt get, he should squeak in. And I think he's a stellar chance here at 12-1.
Okay, brilliant. Let's confirm your selections then. Live, Love, Laugh obviously is going to feature in yours, Darren. Anything else taking your eye? Yeah,
the other one that really stood out to me was Jerry's Back. Jerry's Back, JP's horse, which is why I mentioned earlier on Mennella Rocco keeping the weights down for Philip Hobbs. He's gotten an awful lot of stick for being beaten by Castafiore. I don't think that was any fluke on her behalf.
The mare run an amazing race behind Bag's Groove.
Exactly.
That was really good, wasn't it?
There was no fluke to that run in Haydock when he was beaten by her. I also happen to think Vindication is top class, and he wasn't beaten far by him. Again, he's one of these that's unexposed at the trip. He should be fine on good ground, and he, a little bit fragile previously in his career, but he looks to have been back to good form this year. We all know what JP is like with the handicaps at the festival. This lad's only a 7-year-old as well. He ticks an awful lot of boxes for me. I think we have him in around 25s, and that would look plenty big for me to get involved.
Okay, so there's Darren's 2 selections. Dave?
Glenn Rocco, as previously mentioned.
Yep.
If he goes for this, got to back him. And I don't know if he's going to get in, this horse. It's a horse of Gordian Elliott. It's called It's All Guesswork, who could potentially try his luck.
He ran in a Pertemps qualified the other day, didn't he?
And it was one of the most eye-catching runs.
Yeah, a funny old
century.
Ride came to mind.
Exactly, and that's what they did with Delta Work, of course. Last year's Pertemps winner, he also finished third in that race 12 months ago. So it depends which one he'll get into, but he's got Cheltenham form, and I could see him being a big gamble.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Anthony?
It's going to be the World's End, and I'm going to have a squeak on Rather Be if he turns up, just for the fact that if he turns up, I'm hoping he's in decent nick.
Okay, we'll take a quick break now, but we'll cover the Fred Winter just after this.
Check out Paddy's Rewards Club. Simply place 5 bets of £10 or more across any sport in a week, and you'll get a free £10 bet then next week. T&Cs apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
Welcome back to this Cheltenham Ante Postcast. As promised, the Fred Winter is our next port of call. Won last year by Veneer of Charm, Gordon Elliott and Jack Kennedy. They're going to be winning plenty of prizes at this year's Cheltenham Festival, you'd have to think. Darren, we've got Band of Outlaws, a lovely white-faced horse on the screen behind us. Presumably he's going to be heading your market, or at least near the top of it.
He is, yeah. The Shrewies won't be too happy who thought they spotted one here. He's our 6-1 favourite for the race at the moment. Joseph also has the second favourite in Gardens of Babylon. Chief Justice then is 10-1. Friend or Foe is 10-1. Lethal Steps is 10-1. Fine Brunello also for Joseph is 12s. Canito is 12s. Surin is 12s. Ajali is 14s. Beat the Judge is 14s. Core Sublime is 14s. Hannon, who ran a stormer yesterday, is 14s, and there's a heap more than there, 14s, 16s as well. Okay,
so obviously this race, it's hard to sort of sum up because some of these are on the border of going to the Triumph. I know a lot of people have backed Gardens of Babylon for that. He could run here. I mean, what's your view on who's likely to turn up for the Irish, or who isn't going to turn up?
So just looking at, go down to the prices, we'll go through them. I'd say if Band of Outlaws runs anywhere at Cheltenham, it will be here. Gardens of Babylon, I'd be surprised if he didn't go to the Triumph, and I think he deserves his chance in the Triumph as opposed to in a handicap.
Yep.
Chief Justice will go here, I'd say. Lethal Steps has been laid out for it, I'd say. This has been his primary target all year. Fine Brunello, hard to say. Canito, no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd say it's a few of them will rock up here.
Yeah, we'll see. Dave, obviously Irish are dominating this. Friend or Foe is the only one really within the top tier who's British. Who would be your fancy at this stage? Band of Outlaws, he was impressive last time, but he's still got sort of questions to answer, hasn't he?
I think he almost won a bit too well last time, didn't he?
They didn't want him to win as well as they did they?
It depends how kindly the British handicapper assesses him, really. They said, well, are we going to go to the Giant? They mentioned Aintree afterwards. He's a bit of a speed horse, isn't he? Nice horse, though, no doubt about that. Again, you're looking at sort of plots in here, aren't you, 100%? You mentioned Friend or Foe, who just looks a typical Nichols Fred Winter horse, and he made all at Taunton. That form actually got a dent at Fontwell. He beat a horse called Zafar, who got stuffed at Fontwell at the weekend, but maybe forgive him that. And crucially, he comes from that French sphere, which so many winners seem to, and so many Nichols winners seem to. You must have a stat on that.
I've got plenty of stats on this one if you want to go through a list.
Them.
So, Fred Winter. Since 2005, only Crackaway Jack has won off higher than 11 stone 5. 9 of the last 10 winners have been between 125 and 134 in official ratings. Obviously, that's going to be compressed in the last few years and getting better horses. Only 3 winners in the last 10 have been under 10 to 1. Only 1 in the last 10 had run more than 5 times over hurdles. 5 of the last 10 winners had started their National Hunt career in France. Now, this is actually quite interesting, this one. So 5 had started in the National Hunt career in France. The other 5 winners ran on the flat and had at least 10 runs on the flat in their career. And all 5 of those horses had won on left-handed galloping tracks during their flat career. The last 7 renewals have had the winner or second that started in National Hunt racing in France. 2015, 2016 had the first 3 home in both years in National Hunt horses, National Hunt French horses. And if you backed every single one of the horses that started their jumps careers in France in the last 10 years, 69 horses, 10 years, you'd have had a £1 stake return of £39 and 50 pence from your £1 a time. And if you'd here's a bizarre one for you. If you permed up all of the National Hunt French National Hunt horses, and former flat horses with 10 runs on the flat in trifectas for a £1 stake, you'd be £24,000 up in the last 5 years.
Wow.
Easy done.
Easy, that.
Easy done.
Impressive stats. So, Anthony, Band of Outlaws, we're going to go through these in price order. He's at the top. We've sort of gone through him already. What are the chinks in his armour? What are his strengths?
Well, I mean, you look at the top 2 in the market, and they're the 2 best horses in this race. The issue I'd have is that they're both going to be top weighted if one of them runs or both of them runs. You're probably going to end up. You look at the RPRs of the 2 horses, and you look at 2018, 2017, and what the top weighted horses had as an RPR before this race, and it was basically what these guys are on. One of them's on 129 and 140, I think, 139 for Band of Outlaws, and I mean, ultimately, probably Band of Outlaws isn't going to go to this, surely, or one of them is probably not going to come to this, but either or is going to be the top weight in the race, and that would be putting me off, if I'm honest. There's actually a form line that I really like with Band of Outlaws.
Okay.
And that's with another JP and Joseph O'Brien horse called Canito.
Yeah, who was very well fancied to beat him, wasn't he?
He was. He started his. I've got some numbers on here as well. He started his career in France, and he beat a horse that day that was pretty useful. He beat a horse that ended up running. I think ended up running in the Grade 1 at Chepstow over Christmas. Right. With Kel Destan. The Kel Destan one, and he
Ajali, is it?
Ajali as well, yeah. He came 3rd in that race.
There was a French horse in that race, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't remember the name. It was in JP's colours anyway.
Yeah, so this horse was actually brought over after that, and he ran at Nace at the end of January before JP bought him, and he absolutely hosed up by like 5 lengths, and he won it comfortably. And in behind was Lethal Steps, who's 103 rated on the flat. He's a very useful benchmark. And Lethal Steps have been backed in the last few days, I see. And in behind as well was Star Max, who ended up winning last time out as well. So the form's actually coming up really quite strong. Runrised for Willie Mullins was in 4th, and he's got an entry in a Triumph. This horse ended up running 2 weeks later at Nace again in the race that Band of Outlaws hosed up in. Now, he was sent off 11 to 10 in that race, 11 to 10 favourite, and he didn't get a massively hard race in that. I think it came a bit too soon, and they were just like, well.
It seemed like they were quite surprised.
Yeah, I mean the initial race, I think Joseph was taken aback a bit by him winning, but I really like this horse. I think this could be the jumper in this race.
And that's Canito.
Yeah. I think he's really talented. And you look at the times of the races that he's run. The win at Naas on his Irish debut. Half an hour later, the Limestone Lad, the Esport Delan won. Was run, and that was on the same ground, same track, and it was slower. And this horse was a second or two quicker than that race on yield and ground. Then the Band of Outlaws race that he hosed up in, that was slower too.
Yeah. And
obviously times of races can be subjective, but I reckon this horse is going to get maybe a 133.4, something like that. If he gets around that, then I'm going to be absolutely steam into him. I think he's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, strong words there. Darren, let's just jump back to Band of Outlaws. We've spoken about that form line. You're not keen on him whatsoever. Do your best or your worst.
I don't know, like, the races he's won, just... There's not much to them, to be honest with you. Like that Maze Runner that he beat the last, like fair enough. Look, they crawl round. He was out the back and he was just the fastest horse. He's a miler, right? Grand. The race he won over Christmas. Sorry, is only middling. Like Future Proof he ran okay since, was beaten. Fine Brunello well beaten since. Aim for Glory well beaten. Now fair enough, Fine Brunello was beaten by Fakir Dudairis, and that's reasonable form. I don't know, is he built for this? Like he was a miler on the flat. This is on the new course, or is this the old course? I think on Cheltenham, on the Wednesday. But even so, an undulating track like Cheltenham in a big field, I don't know, just. He's nearly too obvious, if that makes sense. And like even the RPRs he's been recording, like he's going to get in. He's going to be in there as Anthony said, 133, 134. RPRs have him running to 129, and I don't know, does he really have another 10, 15 pounds of improvement in him? He's not the biggest lad in the world either, and the hurly-burly of a handicap like this, I don't know, I'm keen to look elsewhere, but I'm not going to put anyone off back now either. He probably is worthy enough fav, maybe. Yeah,
what about Chief Justice? I mean, he's been out and running for a long time. Is he going to be a bit more exposed than the usual winner for this race?
Yeah, that was kind of my thinking with him, in that he hasn't done too much wrong, but he's been at it for a while. Like he's on the go since September. Like some of his form is reasonably good, like beating Chico Buena, giving her, what was it, 11, 12, 13 pounds even. Yeah. That's decent form. Ran all right behind Sir Eric, ran okay in that graded hurdle at Leopardstown over Christmas as well. Has beaten Cora Sublime, who I actually fancy.
I was just about to get onto him actually, because nothing's gone right for him, and he's got big reputation, hasn't it?
I think he's a highly unlucky horse. Chief Justice, I would say he's too exposed. But Cora Sublime, I'd have a lot of time from. Like I've already put him up for the Triumph, but he might be more likely to go here. Like if you watch him the last day in Goran, I think he went 2s on in the run, or 2 to 5 even in the run. He just came there tanking, and he didn't find Ante. Now what happened was he went home and he scoped badly, so I don't know whether he's actually going to make Cheltenham at all, but if he does, I'd have massive interest in him here, because I think he's just been extremely unlucky. Like he was coming to win his race over Christmas and fell at the last, and obviously scoping badly the last day, and even the time before that when Chief Justice beat him, I think he got a stinker of a ride from Brian Cooper that day. I think he's the type that could be laid out for a handicap like this, and at 14's non-runner no bet, he'd be the one I'd be interested in backing.
Okay, some other Irish horses we've mentioned, Lethal Steps. One we've not really mentioned is Shurin, who are very closely matched with Gardens of Babylon.
Yeah, excellent form, absolutely excellent form. But again, my worries here are the course, and I think she'll get sick when she sees the hill, to be honest with you. They've been my two concerns. She didn't see out her race that strongly the last day at Leopardstown. Now I'm open to correction on that, but I just don't think a slightly stiffer track will suit her. I think she's more of a speed horse.
Yeah, and I might as well stick with you just quickly. Lethal Steps. It seems like Gordon Elliott has known exactly what he wanted to do with this horse for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And that is win the Fred Winter.
I wouldn't disagree with you. Cheveley Park didn't buy him for the crack, do you know what I mean? Decent, obviously, look, 100-rated horse in the flat, like that alone would get you interested. And I'd say...
Has he got the stamina? I know it's a speed race, obviously, but you've mentioned with ex-flat types before, facing the hill. Would that be a worry for you with him?
It would. It definitely would. I don't know, does he definitely say, like he was a miler on the flat, maybe 10 furlongs even tended to stretch him, and the speed they're likely to go off here, I wonder would he be caught out. And I'm trying to figure out, I'd say he'll get a mark of about 120-ish, 122 maybe, which would give him a lovely race and weight. I can definitely see the angle into how you'd say he's laid out for this, and I'd agree with you. Just a couple of negatives there that would sway me elsewhere, that's all.
Okay, that's fine. Dave, what else are we fancying further down? I mean, we've got Nelson River, he's won at the track. Big surprise that was. Fanfan de Soy, I know a few people are quietly keen on him
Me
also.
being one, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I thought that he might be something that could surprise a few in the Triumph, Fanfan de Soy. I think Paddy Pudding probably went a little bit too soon last time, or they just got racing too far out. The one concern is he hasn't been seen since that day, I suppose. That's a bit of a break off that.
Also, like Praceps as well. And
Praceps, who now qualifies, having come third in the Adonis. Stayed really well on the flat from Sir Mark Prescott. Cheltenham should be better for him. Alan King's got a couple of decent juveniles.
Might be worth mentioning him as well.
Yeah, and Nick Gifford's Belagus. Is interesting. Again, Zafar, who I mentioned earlier, with friend or foe, he beat him as well at Ascot. The one thing you might say about is he would probably want some rain, but I can definitely see him getting up that hill.
Okay, and Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, Belagus is interesting. He's beat the judge at Ascot, and beat the judge is a decent benchmark in these races.
Yeah.
I think he'd have a squeak. Farfander Searle, clearly a talented horse. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a decent chaser in time. There's one or two horses we've never even seen before in here, so you've still got a bit of a question mark on some of them. Praceps, I'd say, is a good little horse. Ran a cracker on Saturday.
Yeah, stuck with them, I thought. I was sort of expecting him to fade away a little bit, but he
was a bit sketchy at times over his hurdles, but I'd say he's got something to come. I'd say he's probably got a bit of a hand of what he might be given as a mark after that, because of the winner was so impressive. I'd say there's a few there that are interesting. I'd be interested in see who turns up as the top weight in this, because the likes of Course Sublime, if Band of Outlaws or Gardens of Babylon turn up, then they might get in. Course Sublime might get in at sort of 11 stone 2, 11 stone 3, something like that, and that would be very interesting at that sort of weight.
Let's consolidate your selections then, Dave. I'll go to you first. A win and another bet.
Okay, I think friend or foe ticks loads of boxes, and I can just see him nearly going off favourite here. I think at the moment it is a bit of a guessing game as to who's going to go where, of course, with this. I think he's the one, and at a bigger price. That's a Canito, who you mentioned, can definitely see that muddling race behind his stablemate last time, wasn't it? And they obviously really fancied him that day. I can definitely see that one as well. And Fanfan de Soy as well, if he turns up.
Okay, that's three for the price of one. Anthony.
Magic number.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for Canito as the main selection, because I think he's probably going to end up having £7 or £8 in hand of his handicap mark, whatever he gets. I think it's going to be early 130s. There's one in here that actually is a bigger price that is interesting. Coco Beach.
I think Darren's mentioned him before, haven't you, Darren?
Yeah, Jigginstown horse. I give Anthony the floor there. He can analyse away.
Yeah, he won a race in France, beating a horse called Arverne. This is actually the race that Cheltenham and Ajali. This is the French horse that was in there.
Okay.
This Arverne ran a cracker behind Cheltenham and Ajali, and he might end up having some decent form lines in here with Maze Runner, and I think he's about 33 to 1 in this race. He might need a bit of soft ground, but I'd say he's going to squeak in at bottom handicap and might have a chance in this.
Okay, brilliant. And Darren, finally.
Yes, the main one I'm interested in, as I've already said, is Course Sublime for obvious reasons. And the other one then I'd give a half a squeak to is Joseph's Fine Brunello.
We've not touched on him.
No, he's only had the 2 runs so far, so he could end up struggling to get a mark. It's hard to say. But what interests me the most is the fact that this is his only entry. They didn't even bother entering him in the Triumph. Look, I'm after criticising Band of Outlaws, and I'm saying that I'm fancying this lad. I just think there could be a little bit more to come from him.
He looked sort of very babyish when he was finishing second to Fakir Dudery, didn't he?
This is the thing, yeah. And I'd put that down now as a fairly decent run. My only concern is, right, A, he probably needs another run to get a mark, and B, even if he does, that run could end up lumping him near enough top weight. The handicapper could give him easily 145. they tend to overreact with these juveniles. Like, you look, Ojali is the current top weight, and excuse the French here, but how the handicappers gotten to a mark of 145 with him is a complete and utter piss take. Like, it is a joke. He has not done anything to come even close to justifying that mark, and I think they do overreact with these juveniles an awful lot, and that'd be my worry for Fine Brunello. But if I was going to have a second bet, I would be interested in him.
If he's 145, then Kildestan must hose up in the Triumph off that sort of mark.
Yeah, this is the thing, you know.
Yeah. So that's all for this week. Thanks for listening to us. The same team, fingers crossed, we'll be back next week to talk about the Coral Cup, the Martin Pipe, and then even some specials in there as well. Just a last minute plug to the Racing Post 2019 Cheltenham Festival Guide. It's now available. I like to think I'm modelling it very nicely here. Available in all good newsagents, I'm told, Anthony. Plenty of stats in there, everything you need for your last minute Cheltenham preparations. So be sure to get your hands on one of those.
Paddy Power Games has over 250 of your favourites to play online, and we're going to attempt to name them all in this 10-second ad before the T's and C's kick in. There's Blackjack, 18+, begambleaware.org.